And welcome everybody to a very special edition of the Huddle. I'm Jason Barr, KGUN 9, joined by Pat Parris, and we are coming to you this evening, from Pit Stop BBQ in Sonora, Texas. Pat, we're going to explain everything to everybody, but first, we've been on the road. How are you doing? How's the drive been? And are you looking forward to today's Huddle?
That's how I'm doing, Jason, right there. It's a plate of barbecue beef brisket, also a little turkey, some coleslaw, and some creamed corn. So, yeah, I'm doing excellent. Drive so far, we're getting along well, not just you and me, but John Para, our chief photographer, of course, Heidi Alaga, my co-anchor on KGUN 9. So far, so good. We're, just 2.5 hours outside of San Antonio here.
Okay, so the story of why we're here. Pat and I, along with John Parra, our chief videographer, drove from Tucson to San Antonio and, of course, back in the spring of 2022, March of 2022, because Arizona was playing in San Antonio, the basketball team, in the Sweet 16. And so we needed a place to go for lunch on the way back. And we enjoyed this barbecue pit in Sonora so much that we decided, hey, when we come back to San Antonio here for the Alamo Bowl, which was unexpected, we would stop and have dinner. And then it was an idea for us to actually do the Huddle from barbecue pit in Sonora, which is a great idea, and we're enjoying it. And so that is why we're coming to you this evening from the Huddle. We still wanted to do the Huddle. We wanted to do it on the road. We thought, what better to do it? Where better to do it than Sonora Pit Barbecue?
Forgot to mention that I'm in Texas, so of course I'm drinking a Dr. Pepper. You left out the important thing is we were like, oh my gosh, we need to do it, but we can't remember the name of the place. So I did a quick search.
We remember that it was good food, just not the name.
We remember it was good food, and I remembered it was a unique name that was very much a name that we would remember. And so I just went into maps and found Sonora, and I knew that was the town, and then I saw the barbecue place here. It's terrific barbecue. It's it's not like a chain, Jason. Let's put it that way.
This is the only one, and it's only been in business 5 years. I asked. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So, and of course, why we're here is to head to the Alamo Bowl, where Arizona football is playing Oklahoma in the Valero Alamo Bowl, matchup of top 15 teams, and the highest rated matchup of ranked teams in a bowl game. That's not a New Year's Six game. Arizona's first trip to the Alamo Bowl since 2010, when they lost to Oklahoma State. And the first time they've played Oklahoma since a back-to-back home-and-home series in 1988 and 89. And the game is Thursday night. It's an ESPN game, nationally televised, Pat.
It is. And I also think it's interesting, and we'll talk about this during the week as well. It's the 25th anniversary of that 98 team that went to the Holiday Bowl and won and beat Nebraska. But that was that team that, of course, that only had one loss, considered the best Dick Tomey team, maybe the best, I think arguably, I don't know who's going to argue against it, the best Arizona football team to this point, and they finished fourth in the polls. So it seems like, you can say 25 years later that Arizona football is finally back on a national scene again, Jason, and maybe, we hope this time here to stay for a while.
I do think this team is better than the team that won 10 games in 2014. That was a team that was 10-2 going into the final couple games, got blown out against Oregon in the Pac-12 title game up in the Bay Area, and then lost the Fiesta Bowl to Boise State and finished 10-4. Yeah. So this team, if they win this game against Oklahoma, who won't be playing with a starting quarterback, we'll get to that. This would be a 10-3 team, but just the eye test, Pat, going position by position. I don't want to compare this team to the 98 team. I don't think that's fair, but I do think this might be the best team since.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what we have to look at it is the trajectory. And we often talk about it as you look at the last game they played. It seems like it's been forever ago, but it was the Territorial Cup victory, the blowout win for the Wildcats over the Sun Devils. It's the trajectory that we're seeing, Jason, is that this team in just 3 short years has gone from that one-win team to now a team that has a chance to win double digits. And it just looks like that the talent level is there, and by all accounts will get even better because these guys will mature by a year, and then you bring in some other guys that Jed Fish says, we felt we're able to fill some needs for next year. So it looks all signs point to positive things, not just for this year, but obviously for the future of the Wildcats.
So when we get to Thursday's game here, we've got a situation with some news involving a couple of quarterbacks. For one, you've got the Oklahoma quarterback and Dylan Gabriel, and he announced right after the regular season that he was heading to the transfer portal, and he has since gone to Oregon. So he's not going to be part of this game. Arizona is going to be going up against a freshman quarterback and Jackson Browning, I believe is his name.
Yes.
Jackson Arnold.
And he's a terrific high school player.
Yeah,
Jason.
but a true freshman,
Yeah.
and not the quarterback
True
who threw,
freshman
and not the
with-
quarterback
yeah.
who threw.
That's right.
Who threw 30 touchdowns. So that's an advantage for Arizona. And then we have some news just recently that Jaden Delora, the quarterback who started the year as the starting quarterback for Arizona, he's now hitting the transfer portal. Now, of course, Delora is not supposed to play in this game. It's going to be Noah Fafita. But with a recent rule that players can transfer a second time, even if they haven't graduated yet, that opened the door for Jaden Delora to transfer, hit the transfer portal. But he's going to be with Arizona for this game. So if, God forbid, something does happen to Noah Fafita, he still would be part of this game. And, give Delora credit. It's not he hasn't had a great pass, but he's handled this year well, I think, Pat. He really has.
Well, injuries happen. A lot of times when an injury happens to a starting quarterback, they get their job back. There was just no way he was going to get his job back the way Noah Fafita was playing. And so, Jaden Delora, by all accounts, handled himself very well. I think we both fully expected him, if the opportunity presented itself, that he would transfer. It did. He didn't waste any time in telling everybody just a couple of days. And I think it was yesterday, Christmas, he put out the statement on social media. He will be with the team. He could play in the game and then transfer right after that. We'll see where he ends up. It'll be interesting thing to see exactly where Jaden Delora goes next.
Jason Barr, Pat Parris joining you from Pit Barbecue in I'll make sure I get the name correct. Pit Barbecue Stop, or is it Pit Barbecue? I got the menu right. Pit Stop BBQ. There we go. Jason Barr, Pat Parris joining you from Pit Stop BBQ in Sonora, Texas, on our way to San Antonio for the Valero Alamo Bowl. Pat, you mentioned it's been a while since Arizona football defeated ASU in the Territorial Cup game. I do think the momentum carries over, even though it's been a while. I think the confidence carries over. I think the momentum carries over. Just think if they've been going into this game on a losing streak as opposed to going into a 6-game winning streak.
Six-game winning streak. Yeah.
Your thoughts on the momentum of the 6-game winning streak and how much that matters going into this game against Oklahoma Thursday night?
Well, it's not only the momentum of a winning streak, it's the way you beat ASU. And then you go into a bowl game that, sometimes you go into bowl games, you're like, well, why do we only get to go to this bowl game? This is a very good bowl game, Jason. And for where the Wildcats are right now, if you would have said at the beginning of the season that they'd have 9 wins and they're going to the Alamo Bowl, I think we all would have said, I'll take it. We never expected this. So I think this is a team that wants to be there. And I think Jed Fish has taken the right attitude. He's talked about, and I talked to Dave today, he said the same thing, and that is, look, we're playing one of the perennial powers in college football in Oklahoma, who's leaving the Big 12 Conference. We're going into the Big 12 Conference next year. So there's a lot, there's kind of a lot to prove here. There's a lot on a national stage to show people here. Maybe you don't have to prove anything, but you definitely want to show well. And a win against Oklahoma would be a huge accomplishment for the University of Arizona after 3 short years with Jed Fish. So I think there's not only momentum, but there's a lot of desire and there's motivation. And I think that's what leads me to believe that Arizona should be a slight favorite, and they are.
Yeah, normally when there's a coaching change and a team, is on the rise, their first bowl game isn't the Valero Alamo Bowl, right? It's a third tier game. Okay, maybe it's the New Mexico Bowl. Okay, nothing. When you're on the rise, it's a game you're very happy to go to. It could be somewhere else. It's you usually don't just jump ahead to the Valero Alamo Bowl. So there's definitely something to be said for that. And also, Pat, another storyline for this game is that this is Arizona's final game, the football team in the Pac-12. They go to the Big 12 next year. They're in Big 12 country. There's 5 teams, I believe, already from Texas in the Big 12, where they joined 5 teams.
Yep.
This game is a kickoff to the Big 12. A little bit of a coincidence that they're in this game, but I guess another storyline that they want to do well in front of potential recruits and high school coaches in this game.
Yeah, that's right. And that's another thing. When I had my conversation with Dave Hickey just last week in preparation to head here, we talked a lot about the conference realignments and about Arizona going into the Big 12 from the Pac-12. And he mentioned right away that Texas is, it's the fertile ground of athletes, and this is the area you want to make an impact. And Arizona's done well recently, but this is an area that you can continue to cultivate and maybe grow your base here. And having a game in San Antonio and knocking off a team like Oklahoma, who's not well liked here, obviously, that would be a feather in your cap. That would be something that you could show to the recruits, the potential recruits, to come here.
What are you expecting from the crowd? You just mentioned, Oklahoma not well liked here. There's definitely going to be an Arizona, contingent. I'm not expecting a sellout, but any thoughts? I really haven't given that much thought on what the crowd situation might be. A lot of times in a neutral site, people root for what the perceived underdog might be, right? Even though Arizona's a favorite, not really a team used to get here. Your thoughts on what you think the crowd and the atmosphere is going to be like Thursday night?
Totally a guess, but maybe an educated guess. I'm guessing that Oklahoma, who travels well, will bring a lot of people down here because it's not that far of a drive. It's closer. It's closer for them. But the issue becomes, is Oklahoma really jazzed about playing in this, Alamo Bowl versus what they've played for in the past? And so you may have some Oklahoma fans not come down here that might have in the past. But I think as far as Arizona goes, I think this has been one of those games that's been talked about ever since they beat Arizona State. And we had a really good sense, even before those bowl announcements were made, that they were going to come here to San Antonio. So I really do think Arizona's going to travel well. I wouldn't be surprised if Oklahoma has a few more fans, but I don't think Texas, people in Texas, especially San Antonio, are going to just show up and root for Oklahoma. I would think that they would pick a team and they'd probably root for Arizona.
It's funny. Arizona kind of played in a bowl game last year, and I'll tell you what I mean. The North Dakota State game. Do you remember that game?
Yeah. Yep.
North Dakota State brought so many people from Fargo, and they were all sitting on one side of the field, and Arizona was sitting on another side of the field, and they were loud, right? And it was kind of a bowl-like atmosphere. Arizona doesn't really like to talk about that, because it doesn't really sound great. Hey, our home game was like a bowl game or even, but it really was. People weren't juiced up about Arizona football at that time. So there was kind of that little bit of an atmosphere of a bowl game last year, even if it wasn't officially a bowl game.
Yeah, and I think that's true, and maybe they get some players a sense of what they're going to be in for. They play in some hostile environments, and they know what it's like when you're not at home. I think this will be a fair split. I don't think it'll impact the game one way or another. I think you go back though. Sometimes, Jason, these bowl games are decided by which team really wants to be there and which one maybe doesn't want to be there as much, and that factors in. Arizona wants to be here. Oklahoma, do they really want to be here? So maybe that'll play into it too, especially when maybe a couple of scores get up on the board and you're trailing. You might see Oklahoma wonder if they really are where they want to be.
Interesting. You mentioned your interview with Dave Hickey and the athletic director for Arizona. So we should tell people we did a preview special that you can find on Arizona's OTT, on KGUN 9's OTT channels. 20-something minute bowl preview where we have Pat's six-minute interview with Dave Hickey, plus a whole bunch of other features that we did. I did a story on the kicker of the Arizona football team from 1988 and 89, the last time they played Oklahoma, home and home, and Arizona won on a last-minute field goal. Your thoughts on what Dave Hickey said, about the Big 12 and about the transition going in, and what was Pat, what was your biggest takeaway from your 6-minute interview with Dave Hickey that's airing on our football special?
Yeah, and we should point out it's 6 minutes edited down. It was a much longer interview than that. But you and I have talked about it quite a bit, and that is the financial side of things, and that's obviously on top of mind of a lot of Wildcat fans and University of Arizona alum because of some of the financial struggles they've had lately at the university. And Dave Hickey said, look, it puts us in some much more financial stable setting financially going into the Big 12. We reported on it when it happened, Jason, that the amount of money if they stayed in the Pac-12 was not even guaranteed. It was going to be, Apple TV streaming, and it wasn't. It was about maybe 60% of the money they're going to get now going into the Big 12. So it's a big bump up in revenue every year. It has the potential as the conference grows to have that money grow as well. So financially, I think that was one of the big takeaways I had was none of us wanted to see the Pac-12 go. None of us wanted to miss that regionality that the Pac-12 brings us in the West. But it's gone, and now you're in a conference that's much more stable, and financially, this will help the University of Arizona for years and years to come. It sky's the limit in a lot of ways, and I think that we'll see. We'll see how it plays out as far as where the Big 12 shakes out amongst the power conferences. But I think they're positioned exceptionally well in basketball, obviously, and I think in football we'll have to see. But Arizona, if they continue to get better, then that Big 12 conference in football will be something that they can win occasionally, and maybe that puts them into the playoffs.
Yeah, a lot of people think they might be a favorite going into the Big 12 next year.
Good.
Jason Barr, Pat Parris, joining you from Pit Stop BBQ in Sonora, Texas, on our way to the Alamo Bowl. Excited to do so on a road trip today. And I ran in, actually, Pat, to Johnny Danson, the Arizona football defensive coordinator, in the grocery store the night before we left. And he said, "Oh, you're not going to believe what happened. They just changed the rule. Student athletes, football players can now double transfer even if they haven't graduated. This is going to set up, paraphrase, this is going to set up a real Wild West." And so I thought about it, and I thought, of Jaden DeLaura, who now might be able to transfer. But I thought of, I don't think this is something where Jed Fish is going to take the attitude of, "Oh, for your boy, now to deal with this." I think he's going to take the attitude of, "Hey, this is something I can take advantage of," right? Yeah. Look what they did with the defensive line this past season with Norton and Upshaw, and Norton now coming back next year for his final year. I think you'll look at it as a way to maybe improve the team even more to get, as I joined barbecue here, to get some players who maybe you couldn't have otherwise.
Well, and I think that's the right way to look at it, because what you see is, again, it's the trajectory thing, right? With the University of Arizona football trajecting upward, they're the kind of team with Jed Fish and these other star players that are now emerging, the Tetero and McMillans at the U of A, that makes other players say, "Hey, I want to jump on board that." And if you now have a second transfer option, yes, you're going to lose a Jaden DeLaura. Well, you're probably going to lose Jaden DeLaura at some point anyway, or he was not going to be happy. And now
only one guy can play quarterback.
Yeah, only one guy can be your starting quarterback. You're right. So now you look at it, you say, okay, we can take this and make an advantage, turn it into an advantage. And I think what he was telling you, Jason, is that they got to double their efforts now, because they were looking at the transfer portal of guys that had never transferred before. Now they can look at guys that potentially are making a second transfer. So it expands the pool. That's all it does. It expands the pool of some quality players that want to play, and you've got to sell the University of Arizona. And again, I'll go back to Dave Hickey. I asked him, and it's not in the special, but I asked him about, how hard is it for the University of Arizona in Tucson, Arizona, to compete against, the Alabamas or the Oregons of the world, because for athletes, because their NIL money can be much bigger, right? Because they have such a national base with their alumni, and they have some deep-pocketed alumni, especially at Oregon, obviously. And he said, "You know what? We're not worried about that. For one thing, Tucson, Arizona sells itself." And you notice when guys do come in for visits, how many times, Jason, when guys come in to a visit, do we hear within a few days they've committed to the U of A, at least verbally committed? It happens all the time because it sells itself. Not all the time, but it sells itself enough where you've got the number 4 basketball team in the country and the number 14 football team in the country. That doesn't happen very often. As
we wrap things up here, a couple final thoughts here. Oklahoma's got a couple of tall defensive backs. That's going to be a challenge for Tetero McMillan, maybe a type of player he hasn't seen yet before, and Fafita as well. And the other thing I'd mention is Pat, we talk about the 6-game winning streak, the momentum that they take into this game. Imagine what a 10-win season and a 7-game winning streak would do in the offseason and take them into next year. That's one of the reasons why I really see them win this game. Just as somebody who covered Arizona football this season, I look at the turning point was they were 3-3. They just couldn't get that breakthrough win. They lost in quadruple overtime or whatever it was, or double overtime to USC.
Triple overtime.
USC, and then just coincidentally, Teddy Bruschi talks to the team. He was here for the Arizona Bowl. He said, "Close enough's not good enough," or something like that was his message, right? Sure enough, they go to Washington State. They get the blowout win. They've won 6 straight. I think that was a turning point of the season. And I think, boy, if they could really cap this off on a 7-game winning streak, what that would do for the program in the offseason going forward, my final thought would just be phenomenal.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, Jason, but I didn't allow myself to think that far ahead. But now that you mentioned it, I think that's spot on. You get that 7 straight wins. You get the 10th win of the season. Again, the trajectory, the future is bright. You go into the Big 12 as potentially a favorite, if not one of the favorites, to win it next year in your first year in that conference. So yeah, it's a big game. It's an important game. And you mentioned Tetairoa McMillan and getting open and the big defensive back. When guys that get open, you know what I mean? Yeah. Just ask Patrick Mahomes right now about wide receivers that don't get open, because he's got a load of receivers that don't get open. But as far as Arizona goes, they got a couple of really stud receivers that get open a lot in McMillan and Cowing. And I think they're going to be just fine. And I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Well, once again, I'm Jason Barr with Pat Parris, and maybe not as loud as I normally am, just because there's other people here in the restaurant at Pit Stop BBQ.
Plus, you got your mouth full.
Yeah, that's true.
That's all right.
I've been really trying hard to make sure I do not eat with any mouth open. That's been my number one goal. So I think I've accomplished that. You can tell me otherwise. But anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. And I believe this wraps up this year with the Huddle, this calendar year.
We'll see you on KGUN 9 all week from the Alamo Bowl.
Coverage starting tomorrow, which would be Wednesday if you're watching this on Tuesday at 6 and 10 o'clock, 5, 6 and 10 o'clock. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, very much for watching us here on the Huddle. And for Pat Parris, I'm Jason Barr. And we're going to finish the rest of our meal and then go cover the Arizona Bowl. We'll cover the Alamo Bowl. Arizona Bowl is happening in Tucson. We're going to go cover the Alamo Bowl, and we'll see you when you see you. So enjoy the game, and thanks so much. This has been the Huddle on KGUN 9 streaming platforms.